Hey guys, Peter here to do an album review. Today I'm here to tell you about the latest from Erdve, Savigaila, out July 23rd on Season of Mist. This album has 11 tracks, 42 minutes in length, and this is the band's second full-length studio album. They are a Lithuanian experimental metal band. Now, this record doesn't offer that straightforward structure that you feel engaged with from the first song all the way to the last, that really offers you a starting point, the journey, and then the closure to that journey. This record has a different approach. It's a lot more organic, and because of that, it's a lot more volatile, a lot more chaotic. It's an album that from song to song you feel like your direction is changing, that your movement is changing, that your goal, your finish line is being moved to a different place. It's never steady. There's never a sense of comfort as you move across each and every single song of this album. It's all about volatility. It's all about the aggression that's packed in that volatility. Normally, I'm not a fan of a record that has this sort of balance, that has this sort of design, this sort of approach. I always feel a little bit lost in it. Having said that, I don't think you can create an album that sounds the way this record does and not allow that to impact the way the album is designed, not allow that to impact the way the album is structured, put together, not just on an individual song basis, but obviously on the big picture overall. So I really feel like this album is coming at you from all of these different angles, pushed into that perspective by the super eclectic, volatile, chaotic soundscape that it has, and that it morphs into the overall atmosphere that it carries. The two are really intertwined. You cannot have one without the other, and because of that, they allow them to feel a little bit stronger. It allows the album to feel a little bit more robust, a little bit more cohesive, even though there's a lot of turmoil within that record, within those 11 songs. The soundscape of the record, I already said, it's chaotic. It feels like it's moving in a lot of different directions, and a lot of it is because of the influences that the sound has. You get hardcore, you get black metal, you get sludge. These are very different, distinct influences that really push the album into different prisms. It doesn't have that clear view of having one necessarily being the spinal cord of the album and the other one's kind of like pulling the strings on where you're going. This is a record that from track to track you're going to see different influences. Some songs have more of a black metal spinal cord, some songs are going to have more of a hardcore drive, and some of them have more of a sludge atmosphere. But there's definitely not one that you can pinpoint as being the driver of the experience. The driver of the experience is really the combination of all three coming together, and what does that do to the sound, to the construction of the songs, and how they come across. This is an album that has a lot of thickness of sound. It feels really clunky, it feels really chunky, it feels really dirty, really raw on almost every single turn. Not at every single song, because there are some songs that bring into the forefront a more melancholic, a more clean approach. But overall, when you look at this record, this is an album that feels really rugged at the surface. It feels really chaotic at the surface, really aggressive. And then underneath it all, it packs a little bit of a layer of melancholy that sometimes is allowed to come a little bit more into the surface. It allows it to come in a little bit more into the forefront. It becomes a little bit more noticeable. But the aggression, the ruggedness nature of the soundscape, of the atmosphere of the record itself is really what propels this album, and it's really the flavor that's going to be left in your mouth when you finish this record. Within that soundscape, you definitely have three different driving forces. You have the drums, you have the guitars, and then you have the vocals that kind of become the glue of this record. The drums, I felt, offer thickness of sound. They always offered a consistent approach. Almost on every single track, you always feel what you're going to get out of the drums is consistency. It's the same style, the same sound, the same quality that just really unifies the tracks. There are a few occasions when that's not the case, but they're so rare and so few and far in between that the feel that you get at the end of the record is one that the drums always had a linear path in mind, and they never really deviated from that path from the beginning all the way to the end. On the other hand, you have the guitars, a lot more aggressive, a lot more driven, pushing the envelope, pushing the sound, pushing the direction, sometimes feeling different, but always providing that chunkiness, that raw feel, that rugged edge that the sound on this record has. I don't think you can have that sound without the guitars coming across the way they do on a consistent basis throughout this record. They may be pulling you in different directions, but the thickness of sound, the ruggedness of the production is there from the beginning all the way to the end. And then on top of it, you have the aggression of the vocals, really the glue that brings this whole record together. The vocals work really well throughout this album, and even when they're not there, they're working because they're not there. The song didn't need them, so their removal from the equation allows them to have still an important role just by you noticing them. That they would have been too much in a song that was trying to go perhaps in a much different place or going into a much different atmosphere than what the previous songs had and what the ones that came afterwards were providing. I like the vocals, I like the aggression, I like the rawness that they have, I like the deepness of sound, always trying to push forward, always trying to break through. And like I said, even in the songs where they're not dominant or they're not there at all, you still feel like they are present in spirit, if you will, because the lack of them adds a different parameter to the overall comprehension of this record. Overall, I think this is an album that's going to be very hard to digest for the fans of metal that are on the periphery. But it's an album that's going to appeal to a lot of different fans at the same time. If you're a fan of black metal, I think this album has a lot of elements that you're going to gravitate to. If you're a fan of sludge, same thing applies. And even if you're a fan of hardcore, this album could really hit home with those fans. So it's an album that's going to reach a large fan base because of all the influences of its soundscape, but at the same time, it's going to sit a little bit on the periphery because for those that are not as aware of what's on the outside of those genres, on the periphery of those genres, this album is going to be super hard to digest. There's just a lot to it. It's a complicated, it's a complex album that it might sound simple at the first approach because of the ruggedness that it possesses, because of the ruggedness that puts forward, but it's a complicated album to process. It's a complicated album to understand, and because of that, it takes many spins before you actually feel comfortable in it. You feel comfortable with the sound, with the presence, with everything coming together. It took me several times going through this record to even start to get what the album was about, to even start to get all the nuances, the ebbs and flows that this record has to offer to the listeners. So not one of those albums that you can listen to it on the fly, that you can skip or skim through it and feel like you're getting the essence of it, because you're not. And if you're on the periphery, this album is definitely not for you. This is more for the hardcore fan. And I don't mean hardcore fan from the genre's perspective, but I mean a hardcore fan of metal that wants to dive deeper into something a little bit harder to process, something a little bit more aggressive, something a little bit more rugged. This album definitely would hit home with those fans. Now, as far as favorite songs are concerned, I want to start off with Smala, a song that has an interesting style, a more calm opening, which is really important for this track because it lets you feel comfortable as you get into the aggression. It doesn't kick you right away, it doesn't punch you right away. It kind of has this soft opening style that then allows the aggression to come in right around the corner and then just becomes the song itself. It's very thick, it's very chunky, it's very bumpy. You really feel the bumps as you progress through this track, but it's really built as a song that has volume, that has presence. You can see all the different layers in it, so it feels big, it feels heavy, it feels aggressive because of that volume that it carries from top all the way to the bottom. Intensive at times, both musically and vocally. A song that hides a little bit of melancholy in it because it just feels so aggressive at the surface. Next you have Betonas. This one is like from the start, it's right in your face. It doesn't give you a sense of simmering. It doesn't give you a sense of easing you into the track. It's right from the get-go. It's aggression. There are some pauses throughout the song, but you never really feel like the pauses slow down the track. You just kind of break. There's breaks. There's different chapters, if you will, of aggression, and they're all put together, and then you have these little breaks here and there. Now, the breaks are important because it almost gives you a little bit of a reset, and the fact that they're not prolonged really helps the momentum of the song and really feels like the song doesn't even pause at all. So it's a very well-constructed song that has ebbs and flows. Those pauses become the valleys, and all the aggression that surrounds them becomes the peaks. So I really like how this song is constructed. I really like how this song is put forward. Then you have Bendrystė. The guitar really rips through this track, and it becomes the more predominant focal point that you're going to really attach yourself to it. There's other elements that play an impact on how the track comes across, because musically and vocally from the start is a song that has a lot of strength, that has a lot of volume, that has a lot of aggression. But I really felt that the guitars kind of took a little bit of the forefront on this song in terms of driving the experience. I like how it feels. I like the chaos that it has. It's just a very powerful track all around. It doesn't have as many ebbs and flows. It feels more linear from the start all the way to the finish, even though there are still some changes throughout. But the way it comes at you, because it has aggression, because it has volume, because it has power, and because it doesn't have those pauses, it doesn't have as much of ebbs and flows as you perhaps would expect. When you put all of that together, it makes the song feel very condensed, very compressed, very aggressive, very in your face from the start all the way to the finish. So I like the power, I like the chaos that's held inside of this track. It always feels like it's about to explode. It always feels like the chaos is about to come loose, but it never really does. It always finds a way of controlling itself from start all the way to the finish. This is it. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the album. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.